The cold arrived early that winter, biting harder than anyone expected. Wind rushed through the narrow streets like an uninvited guest, slipping under coats and finding every weakness. On the corner near a small, darkened bakery stood a young woman holding her daughter's hand. The girl trembled, her breath visible in short white clouds, while the mother pulled her closer, pretending the night was not as cruel as it felt. Aisha had learned how to smile even when her heart ached. At 29, she carried exhaustion far older than her years. Her coat was thin, its buttons mismatched, and her shoes had tiny cracks that let the cold seep in. She kept shifting her feet, not for warmth, but to distract her daughter, Lena, from the pain in her toes. Lena was 7, small for her age, with wide eyes that noticed everything and said very little. The bakery lights were off now, the sign flipped to closed. Earlier, Aisha had stood inside, counting coins with shaking fingers. She had whispered apologies to the baker as she pushed the money back across the counter. It was not enough. The cake she had promised Lena would have to wait. She told herself she would explain later, when Lena was warmer, when her own voice would not break. "I'm not cold, Mama," Lena said softly, though her teeth clicked together. She hugged her worn cloth doll. "It's stitching loose at the arm. We can walk a bit. Walking helps." Aisha swallowed. "You're very brave," she said, kissing Lena's hair. "Just like always." They began moving, slow steps along the sidewalk, passing bright shop windows that reflected a life Aisha once believed she might reach. She remembered better days, before bills stacked like walls, before promises turned into apologies. Her husband had died in an accident 3 years earlier, leaving behind silence and responsibility. Since then, Aisha worked wherever she could, cleaning, sewing, serving, always one bad week away from nothing. Across the street, a sleek black car rolled to a stop. Its engine purred softly, indifferent to the cold. Inside sat Daniel Hawthorne, a man the city newspapers called a miracle builder, a billionaire who turned failing companies into gold. Tonight, he loosened his tie and stared out the window, feeling nothing like a miracle. He had just left a charity gala filled with speeches about compassion and checks written without thought. Applause echoed in his ears, hollow and loud. Daniel noticed a mother and child by accident at first, a movement against the gray. He watched them walk, stop, and walk again, as if unsure where to go. Something in the way the woman leaned toward the child caught his attention. It was protective, fierce, and tired. He told himself to look away. He had seen need before. He had funded it, studied it, solved it on paper. Still, his eyes returned to them. A sharp gust of wind made Lena stumble. Aisha tightened her grip just in time, pulling her back. Lena laughed weakly, pretending it was a game, but her knees shook. Daniel felt a strange pressure in his chest. He thought of the house waiting for him, vast and quiet, every room perfectly warm and painfully empty. He thought of nights when silence pressed harder than any winter. "Sir, shall we go?" his driver asked gently. Daniel did not answer right away. He watched as Aisha knelt to adjust Lena's scarf, her hands red and raw. She spoke softly, words carried away by the wind. Lena nodded, brave again. Daniel opened the car door. Cold rushed in, sharp and real, and for the first time that night he welcomed it. Aisha heard the door before she saw him. Her body stiffened, instincts flaring. She pulled Lena closer as footsteps approached. A tall man stood a few feet away, his coat fine, his expression unreadable. She prepared herself for judgment, for questions, for a familiar look of pity that burned worse than hunger. Instead, he looked at Lena, then at Aisha, and his voice was quiet. "You shouldn't be out here in this cold." Aisha straightened. "We're fine," she said quickly. "We were just leaving." Daniel nodded, as if he understood something deeper. He removed his gloves, hesitating only a second. The city noise faded around them, replaced by the sound of Lena's breathing and the wind. Daniel felt words rise, unplanned, heavy with meaning he did not fully grasp. "Come with me," he said. Aisha froze. The world narrowed to that sentence, simple and impossible. She looked down at Lena, then back at the stranger. Fear tangled with exhaustion. She wanted to refuse, to protect what little dignity she had left. But Lena swayed, her face pale, her eyes glossy with cold. Daniel held out his coat, not stepping closer. Just to warm up, he added. No obligations. The moment stretched. Aisha searched his face for lies and found only loneliness that mirrored her own. Slowly, she nodded. Lena looked up at Daniel and smiled, small and trusting. Daniel felt something shift inside him, something fragile and alive. As they moved toward the waiting car, the cold still raged around them, but a quiet warmth began to grow, unnoticed, carrying the promise that this night was not the end of their story, but its beginning. Daniel glanced once more at the dark bakery, at the promises canceled and the dreams postponed, and felt an unfamiliar resolve settle in his bones. He did not know what tomorrow would demand or how long courage would last, but he knew this choice mattered. Aisha stepped forward, each step cautious, protecting Lena with her body, yet allowing hope a narrow opening. Lena squeezed both their hands, unaware of the weight of the moment, thinking only of warmth. Above them, the city lights flickered, and somewhere beyond the cold, change waited patiently to be invited inside. The night listened, holding its breath, as three paths quietly crossed forever together in silence now. The warmth of the car felt unreal, like stepping into another world. As soon as the door closed, the cold was shut out, leaving only the low hum of the engine and the soft rush of heated air. Lena curled into the seat, her shivering slowing as the warmth reached her fingers. Aisha remained stiff, sitting on the edge, her hands folded tightly in her lap as if holding herself together. Daniel watched them through the rear-view mirror, without staring. He noticed how Aisha's eyes kept moving, measuring exits, danger, intention. He recognized that look. It was the look of someone who had learned that help often came with a price. "You can relax," he said gently. "We're just going somewhere warm. After that, you can decide." Aisha nodded, though her shoulders stayed tense. "Thank you," she said, her voice careful. Gratitude, she had learned, could sometimes sound like surrender. Lena leaned forward slightly, curiosity replacing fear. "Your car is very quiet," she said. "It feels like a cloud." Daniel smiled despite himself. "I like that description," he replied. "It's supposed to be comfortable. Do you live in it?" Lena asked, completely serious. Aisha gasped softly. "Lena!" Daniel laughed, a real sound that surprised him. "No, I don't," he said. "But sometimes it feels like I spend more time in it than anywhere else." As the car moved through the city, lights blurred past the windows. Aisha watched them, her thoughts racing. She reminded herself she was doing this for Lena. Warmth first, safety first. After that, she would leave, no matter how kind this man seemed. Daniel's home rose behind tall gates at the end of a quiet road. The building was large, elegant, and intimidating, its windows glowing warmly against the dark. Aisha's breath caught. She instinctively pulled Lena closer. "We can stop here," she said quickly. "This is more than enough." Daniel turned in his seat. "Please," he said, his tone earnest, "at least come inside. You both need rest." The gates opened silently, and the car rolled forward. Lena pressed her face to the glass. "Mama," she whispered, "it looks like a story house." Aisha did not answer. Her heart pounded as they stepped inside, greeted by quiet and warmth and the faint scent of polished wood. Staff members appeared, surprised but composed. Daniel spoke softly to them, giving instructions without explanation. "Hot food," he said, "and blankets, and something warm to drink." Aisha opened her mouth to refuse, then closed it again. Lena's fingers were already pinking with warmth, her shoulders relaxing. Aisha felt tears sting her eyes and turn away before anyone could see. They were shown into a small sitting room instead of the grand hall. Daniel seemed to notice her discomfort and chose simplicity over display. Lena sank into the sofa with a sigh that carried weeks of exhaustion. "This is the best chair ever," she announced. Daniel crouched slightly to her level. "I'm glad you like it." A cup of hot soup was placed in Lena's hands, then another in Aisha's. The steam rose gently, and the smell made Aisha realize how hungry she truly was. She hesitated only a second before sipping. The warmth spread through her, loosening something deep in her chest. "Thank you," she said again, this time softer, truer. They ate mostly in silence. Lena's eyelids drooped, her head tilting against the cushion. Aisha brushed hair from her face, her touch tender and protective. Daniel watched from a respectful distance, feeling like an intruder in something sacred. "I can arrange a room for the night," he said quietly. "Just for rest." Aisha looked up sharply. "We won't stay long," she said. "I don't want to be a burden." Daniel shook his head. "You're not." Lena yawned, stretching her arms. "Mama, can we sleep just a little?" she murmured. Aisha closed her eyes for a moment. The decision felt heavy, but the answer was already there. "Just tonight," she said to Daniel. "Tomorrow we'll go." He nodded, accepting the boundary without argument. Of course. The room they were given was warm and simple, far from extravagant. Clean clothes waited neatly folded. Aisha stared at them, overwhelmed. "I can't," she began. "They're used," Daniel said. "Please." That night, as Lena slept curled under thick blankets, her breathing slow and peaceful, Aisha sat by the window, watching snow begin to fall. She felt fear, gratitude, and a fragile hope she had not allowed herself in years. Down the hall, Daniel stood alone in his study, staring at a child's forgotten doll resting on the table. The house felt different, quieter yet fuller. He realized that when he said, "Come with me," he had not just invited them inside. He had opened a door within himself, one he had kept locked for a very long time. Outside, the city slept, unaware that three lonely hearts were beginning, cautiously, to move toward warmth, trust, and something neither wealth nor struggle could buy alone. Morning arrived slowly, sunlight spilling softly through the tall windows of Daniel's grand house. Aisha woke first, blinking against the unfamiliar brightness. For a moment, she thought it had all been a dream. Cold streets, a shivering child, a stranger's sudden kindness. But the warmth in the room, the sound of quiet footsteps in the hall, and the steady rhythm of Lena's breathing reminded her it was real. She pressed a hand to her chest, feeling both relief and lingering guilt. She wasn't supposed to accept help like this, yet she had. For Lena's sake, she had. Lena stirred, blinking sleep from her eyes. She sat up, wrapped in the soft blanket, and looked around with wide-eyed wonder. "Mama, it's so warm," she whispered, her voice carrying the awe of a child seeing a dream come alive. Aisha smiled faintly, brushing her daughter's hair back. Daniel appeared at the doorway, quietly observing them. His presence was calm, careful, not intrusive. "Good morning," he said softly. "Sleep well." "Yes," Lena said, her small voice still edged with disbelief. Aisha nodded, keeping her hands busy adjusting Lena's scarf. Daniel moved closer, standing by the edge of the bed. "I hope I didn't startle you," he said. "You can have breakfast whenever you're ready. I thought some food might help." Aisha hesitated. "Thank you, but we should leave soon," she said, the old instinct to protect her dignity rising. Daniel shook his head gently. "No, please stay, at least until you're warm and fed. After that, you can decide anything." His voice carried no hint of power or demand, just sincerity. Lena tugged at Aisha's sleeve. "Mama, can we stay?" she asked, her innocence cutting through the tension. Aisha swallowed. She wanted to say no, to insist they could manage on their own. But looking at her daughter's hopeful eyes, she realized how small acts of kindness could mend more than hunger or cold. They could heal hearts. "Just for today," she murmured, and Lena's face lit up like sunrise. They walked to the dining room together, Aisha quietly scanning the surroundings. Daniel had prepared a simple breakfast, nothing extravagant, but warm and filling. Pancakes, fresh fruit, eggs, comfort food that smelled like care. Lena's eyes widened. "Mama, this is amazing," she said, picking at the pancakes with delight. Daniel poured tea for Aisha, sitting at the table across from them. He watched quietly as mother and daughter ate, feeling a strange warmth he had not experienced in years. He realized he had spent decades building wealth, buying the world, yet he had never felt the simple intimacy of watching someone's genuine gratitude. After breakfast, Lena explored the room timidly, touching furniture with curiosity. "You live here all alone?" she asked suddenly. Her innocent question brought a sharp pang to Daniel's chest. He nodded. "Yes," he said softly. "It's big, but quiet." Lena frowned. "Quiet can be lonely," she said matter-of-factly. Daniel swallowed hard. She was right. The house had been full of objects, but empty of warmth for too long. "Yes, it can be," he admitted. Aisha's gaze fell on him, noticing the subtle sadness behind his composed exterior. There was a story there, one of loss, loneliness, and years of guarding himself with wealth. She didn't ask. Sometimes, silence spoke louder than questions. Lena wandered into Daniel's study and returned shortly after, holding a small piece of paper. "I drew this for you," she said shyly. It was a stick figure drawing of 3 people holding hands, smiling. "We can all be happy together," she explained. Daniel looked at the simple, pure drawing, and something inside him shifted. He felt an ache in his chest, a longing he hadn't named in years. His eyes blurred slightly, and for the first time, he allowed himself to feel the weight of connection he had been avoiding. Aisha watched him carefully, sensing the emotional tremor behind his composed face. She realized he wasn't just a wealthy man offering help. He was a human being, lonely, yearning for purpose beyond numbers and success. The day passed with quiet conversations, small gestures of care, and gentle laughter from Lena. Daniel showed him the library, the garden, and simple corners of the house, choosing to keep his world gentle and approachable rather than overwhelming. The child's laughter echoed in spaces that had been silent for years, a sound that seemed to breathe life into the walls themselves. Aisha felt herself relax for the first time in years. She allowed herself to eat without rushing, to smile without guilt, to rest without fear. For Lena, she had accepted kindness. For herself, she realized she had accepted hope. Yet, as evening approached, Aisha reminded herself of reality. "Tomorrow we should leave," she said quietly, her voice tinged with resolve. "I can find work. We don't want to impose." Daniel's expression softened. He respected her pride. "I understand," he said, "but I hope you allow me to help in a way that doesn't feel like charity. There are ways I can support without taking your independence away." The mother nodded, appreciating his thoughtfulness. He wasn't offering a handout. He was offering a chance. Lena, meanwhile, had curled into a chair with a warm blanket. She whispered, "I like it here, Mama. I think we can be happy." Aisha's heart ached with tenderness. Happiness was a foreign word for them, one they hadn't been able to afford. But here, in this quiet house, with a man who didn't demand anything but offered kindness, it felt possible. As night fell, Daniel walked past a window, looking out at the softly falling snow. The streets he had walked alone for years were cold and unforgiving. But inside, warmth bloomed in a way he had never imagined. He realized that when he said, "Come with me," he had not just invited them into a house. He had invited them and himself into the possibility of connection, trust, and healing. Aisha tucked Lena into bed, brushing the hair from her forehead. The child's eyes closed, peaceful for the first time in what felt like months. Aisha sat beside her for a moment, allowing herself to breathe, to feel gratitude without shame. Daniel returned to the study, taking the child's drawing and placing it carefully on his desk. The 3-stick figure seemed to smile back at him, a reminder that family could be chosen, not just inherited. He had wealth beyond measure, but for the first time, he realized that love, care, and trust were the riches that truly mattered. The night stretched on, gentle and quiet. 3 hearts, once lonely and weary, began the delicate work of healing together, unspoken but deeply understood. Outside, the city slept, unaware that mother, a child, and a lonely billionaire were discovering warmth not from wealth, but from connection, and that this night would change all their lives forever. The morning sun spilled gently through the tall windows, painting the room with soft golden light. Aisha sat at the small breakfast table, stirring her tea slowly. Lena was already dressed, bouncing on her toes in excitement, her eyes sparkling with hope. Yet, in Aisha's heart, there was a quiet tension. Today, she thought, they would leave. The warmth they had received felt like a temporary gift, not a permanent home. Daniel entered the room, holding a tray of fresh pastries. He smiled gently at Lena, who ran to him without hesitation. "Good morning," he said. "Did you sleep well?" "Yes," Lena said, hugging him. "I don't want to leave." Aisha's heart tightened. She knelt beside her daughter. "Lena, we need to be strong. Remember what I said?" But Daniel's voice stopped her. Calm, sincere, it carried no demands. "I hope you won't leave because of fear or pride. This house, it can be a home. Not mine alone, but yours, too." Aisha froze, surprised by the simplicity and honesty in his words. I can't just take your kindness," she whispered. "You're not taking anything," he said softly. "You've earned your place here just by being yourself, by caring for her, and by facing each day with courage." Lena tugged at Aisha's sleeve. "Mama, can we stay? Please." Aisha looked at her daughter, then at Daniel. She saw no arrogance, no hidden agenda, only genuine warmth. Her pride softened. Maybe accepting help didn't mean giving up her dignity. Maybe it meant trusting someone who truly wanted to make a difference. Finally, she nodded. We will stay. For Lena's sake, and because it feels right." Daniel smiled, a quiet, relieved smile that carried years of loneliness lifting from his shoulders. "Then let's make this house a home, together." That day passed in quiet joy. Lena explored the garden, laughing freely as snow melted under the weak morning sun. Aisha unpacked a few belongings they had brought, arranging them with care in a cozy room Daniel had prepared. Every action was small, yet deeply meaningful, a reflection of their growing bond. In the evening, they gathered around the dining table for their first shared meal as something new. Not strangers, not temporary guests, but a family. No words could capture the unspoken understanding between them. Three hearts, once burdened by loneliness and fear, were learning how to trust, to care, to belong. Lena leaned against Daniel, whispering, "Thank you for letting us stay." Daniel brushed her hair gently. "No, Lena, thank you for reminding me what it feels like to be part of family." Aisha watched them, tears welling in her eyes. She realized that this was not charity. This was connection. This was love in its purest, simplest form. And for the first time in years, she felt a peace she had thought impossible. Outside, the city lights twinkled, oblivious to the quiet miracle that unfolded in one small corner. Inside, three lives intertwined, not by blood, but by choice, by kindness, and by the courage to open hearts when hope seemed almost lost. And in that warmth, that quiet, shared joy, the lonely billionaire, the weary mother, and the little girl discovered what they had all been searching for, a family together at last.